You were not born needing approval. That is not an opinion, that is a fact about your original nature. When you came into this world, you cried when you were uncomfortable. You laughed when something felt good. You reached for what you wanted without asking anyone if it was okay. You did not check faces before you felt something. You did not pause to see if the room agreed with your emotion. You just lived purely, directly, without permission, and somewhere along the way, that changed. Somewhere a moment happened. Maybe someone frowned when you were too loud. Maybe someone withdrew when you said the wrong thing. Maybe you learned very early that love was conditional, that warmth came and went depending on your behavior. And so you adapted. You learned to read the room before you entered it. You learned to sense moods before you spoke. You learned to shrink yourself, shape yourself, adjust yourself, or to keep the warmth from leaving. That was survival then, but you are not a child anymore. And what was survival then is destruction now. This is what people-pleasing actually. Because it is not kindness, it is not consideration, it is not being a good person. Those things come from a place of fullness, people. Pleasing comes from fear. Fear that who you really are is not enough. Fear that if you show your true self, people will leave. Fear that your real opinions, your real needs, your real presence will cost you love. So you trade yourself for safety. Every single day you say yes when everything inside you says no. You smile through conversations that exhaust. You agree with things that go against everything you believe, and you call it being good, but it is not goodness. It is self-erasure. It is a slow, quiet disappearing. And here is what makes it so dangerous. It does not feel dramatic. It does not feel like destruction. It feels like being responsible. It feels like keeping the peace. It feels like being mature, being the bigger person, being easy to be around. But underneath every one of those moments where you swallowed your truth to make someone comfortable, something was being taken from you. Your sense of who you are, your internal reference point, the quiet, steady knowing of what you actually want, what you actually feel, what you actually believe, that gets worn away, slowly, silently, until one day you sit alone and you genuinely do not know what you like anymore. You do not know what you want. You do not know what you think unless you have checked with someone else first. That is not a small problem. That is a collapsed identity. Think about the last time someone asked your opinion, really. Think about it. What was the first thing you did? Did you go inward and find your actual answer? Or did you scan the other person first? Did you read their expression, their energy, their expectation, and then form your answer in a way that would land well with them? If you did that, you are not sharing your opinion. You are performing one. You are manufacturing a version of yourself in real time based on what the other person seems to want. And you do it so fast, so automatically, that it feels natural. It feels like you. But it is not you. It is the version of you that was trained to survive by being acceptable. The identity you were born with had a center. It had preferences, instincts, impulses, desires. It had a direction it naturally moved in, and every time you betrayed that center to gain approval, you moved further from it. Every time you said yes to something your body was screaming no to, you taught yourself that your internal signals do not matter. Every time you reshaped your personality to fit what someone else needed, you practiced becoming less. And now you're living with the result of all that practice. You wake up and you feel undefined. You move through your days feeling like you are performing a role, never quite feeling real, never quite feeling present, always slightly outside of yourself. This is what people-pleasing does over time. It does not just steal your confidence, it steals your selfhood, and the approval never fills it. That is the part no one tells you. You have been chasing something your whole life, and every time you catch it, it disappears. Someone approves of you, and for a moment it feels like relief. But the relief does not last, it never lasts, because the approval was given to the version of you that performed, not to the version of you that actually exists, so it cannot reach you. It lands on the mask, and you are standing behind the mask, still empty, still waiting, and so you perform again, do more, give more, shrink more, hoping that this time the approval will actually touch you. It will not. It cannot. Because what you are really aching for is not their approval. What you are aching for is your own. The deep, settled, unshakable sense that who you are is enough, that you do not need to earn your right to exist in a room, that you do not need to perform to deserve love, but you will never find that by looking outward. That is an inside discovery, and it begins with understanding what you have actually been doing. All this time you have been outsourcing your identity. Every time you checked someone's face to know how to feel, you handed your internal authority to another person. Every time you changed your answer based on the mood in the room, you gave someone else the pen to your own story. Every time you held back a real thought because it might create conflict, you appointed someone else as the judge of your reality. And the terrifying thing is, most people do this with everyone, not just one person. Every relationship, every room, every dynamic, a different performance for each one. And after years of this, they cannot tell you who they are, because they have never had the chance to find out. They have been too busy figuring out who everyone else needs them to be. This is what is blocking your real life, not circumstances, not lack of opportunity, not bad luck. This pattern of seeking permission from the outside world to simply be yourself. Your real life, the one that actually fits you, requires you to be someone specific. It requires you to have preferences and honor them. It requires you to have limits and hold them. It requires you to be willing to disappoint some people in order to stay true to what is real inside you. But as long as you are still running the approval program, you cannot access any of that. You will keep choosing the path that keeps everyone comfortable. You will keep selecting the option that makes the least waves. You will keep editing yourself down and down and down until the life you are living belongs to everyone except you. And you feel it. You feel it in the low-grade exhaustion that never fully goes away. You feel it in the resentment that builds quietly under your kindness. You feel it in the moments of loneliness that hit you, even when you are surrounded by people. Because the loneliness is not about being alone, it is about being unseen, and you are unseen because you will not let yourself be seen. You keep showing the version that is safe, that is palatable. That will not create a problem. And the real you watches from somewhere deep inside, still waiting, still hoping that one day you will stop managing everyone else's comfort and start living your own life. That day does not come automatically. It comes when you decide, and the decision is not about becoming selfish. It is not about becoming cold or uncaring or difficult. It is about understanding one fundamental thing. You cannot pour from a collapsed self. You cannot genuinely give to others when you have erased yourself to please them. What you give from that place is not love. It is anxiety wearing the costume of kindness. Real love, real care, real generosity comes from someone who is full, someone who is present, someone who knows who they are and gives from that knowing. That is who you are, meant to be, not the version that shrinks and adjusts and disappears, the version that is whole. And building that version begins with one thing: honesty, not cruelty, not rebellion, honesty, starting to notice in real time when you are betraying yourself, when you are about to say yes and mean no, when you are about to perform instead of speak, when you are scanning the room instead of checking in with yourself, just noticing. Because awareness is the beginning of everything, and you are only at the beginning. You have spent years being easy to be around, and it has cost you everything, not in a dramatic, visible way, not in a way anyone could point to and say, look, there is the damage, but in the quiet, accumulated way that only you can feel, in the way you hesitate before speaking, in the way you feel relieved when plans get cancelled, in the way you replay conversations afterward, checking, analyzing, wondering if you said the wrong thing, in the way you feel more comfortable alone than in most rooms, because alone is the only place you do not have to manage anyone. That is not introversion, that is exhaustion from a lifetime of performing. And the performing started with a belief so deep you never even noticed it was there. The belief that who you naturally are is a problem, that your real thoughts are too much, that your real needs are too demanding, that your real self, if fully shown, would drive people away. So you built a version, a curated, careful, socially safe version, One that agrees at the right moments. One that laughs even when nothing is funny. One that never pushes back, never takes up too much space, never asks for too much. And you sent that version out into the world, while the real you stayed hidden, waiting, watching, slowly, forgetting what it felt like to just be. Here is something you need to sit with. The relationships built on your performance are not real relationships. Read that again. The connections you have maintained by being whoever someone needed you to be, those are not connections to you. They are connections to your mask. And somewhere inside, you already know this. That is why certain friendships feel hollow, even though they are years old. That is why certain rooms feel lonely, even when they are full. That is why certain compliments do not land, do not satisfy, do not fill anything. Because the compliment was for the performance. And you are so much more than a performance, but no one gets to see that. Because you will not let them. Because somewhere along the way, you decided that the real you was not safe to show. And so the real you became a secret, not intentionally. Not as a choice you consciously made, but as a slow result of every moment you edited yourself down. Every time you stopped yourself from saying what you actually thought. Every time you pushed down a need because it seemed like too much to ask. Every time you chose harmony over honesty, the real you got quieter and quieter. Until now, even you struggle to hear it. You sit in moments of decision, and you feel nothing from the inside. No clear pull, no strong preference, no instinctive knowing. Just a kind of blankness where your identity used to be, and that blankness is the result. That is what years of people-pleasing produces, not just anxiety, not just resentment, but an actual disconnection from your own inner world. There is a word for this. It is called self-abandonment, and it is not a small thing. Self-abandonment is what happens when, over and over again, you choose the comfort of others over the truth of yourself. When you dismiss your own feelings to manage someone else's, when you silence your own needs to keep someone else at ease, when you override your own instincts to avoid conflict. Each one of those moments is a small act of leaving yourself, and when you do that enough times, you stop trusting yourself. You stop believing that your inner signals are reliable. You stop believing that your preferences matter. You stop believing that you are allowed to want things without justifying them, and you become dependent. Dependent on others to tell you who you are, dependent on their reactions to know if you are okay, dependent on their approval to feel stable. This is the trap, and most people never see it clearly enough to name it. They just feel the symptoms and wonder why they are never at peace. Peace does not come from being accepted by everyone. Let that land. Peace does not come from being accepted by everyone. It comes from accepting yourself, from knowing what you stand for and standing there, from knowing what you will not do and not doing it, from knowing who you are, even when no one around you confirms it. That kind of peace is unshakable, because it does not depend on anyone else's mood, anyone else's opinion, anyone else's presence or absence. It lives inside you, but you can only access it when you stop running. When you stop trying to manage how everyone perceives you and start getting honest about how you actually are. The version of you that constantly seeks approval is always running. Always checking, always adjusting. It is one of the most exhausting ways to exist because the goalposts never stop moving. What satisfies one person offends another. What earns approval today invites criticism tomorrow. You can never get it right because you are trying to control something that is completely outside your control. What other people think of you is their internal experience. It is shaped by their history, their fears, their projections, their own unresolved patterns. It has almost nothing to do with you. And yet you have organized your entire inner life around trying to influence it. You have shaped your personality around it. You have made major life decisions around it. You have stayed in things that were wrong for you and avoided things that were right for you, all to manage the perceptions of people who are mostly too absorbed in their own lives to notice. This is what the approval-seeking pattern actually costs you. Not just peace, not just energy. It costs you direction, because every time you make a decision based on what will please others, you are not making a decision based on what is true for you. And over time, that adds up to a life that is shaped by other people's preferences. A career chosen for approval, Relationships entered for validation. Opinions formed to fit the group. A version of yourself assembled from other people's expectations. And then one day you look at your life and feel this quiet, aching wrongness, this sense that nothing fits, that you are somehow living beside your life, not inside it, that the whole thing belongs to someone else. That feeling is not emptiness. That feeling is the truth of your situation breaking through. It is your real self, the one underneath all the performance, pressing against the walls you have built around it, asking to finally be let out. And here is what that feels like for most people. It does not feel like a clear message. It does not arrive with instructions. It arrives as restlessness, as a vague but persistent sense that something is wrong without knowing exactly what, as a low energy that does not lift no matter how much you rest, as irritability with people you are supposed to love, as a longing you cannot name for something you cannot describe. All of it is the same signal. All of it is pointing to the same thing. You are not living as yourself. You are living as the version of yourself that was built to be acceptable. And that version is not you. It was never you. It was a survival strategy, and it has lived past its purpose. So what does it mean to actually come back to yourself? It does not mean becoming someone else. It does not mean a dramatic transformation that no one recognizes. It means something quieter and deeper than that. It means beginning to close the gap between what you actually feel and what you express, between what you actually want and what you allow yourself to pursue, between who you are when no one is watching and who you are when the world is looking. That gap is where your energy is leaking. That gap is where your peace is disappearing. That gap is the source of the quiet suffering you carry. And closing it is not a single moment. It is a practice, a daily, sometimes uncomfortable practice of choosing yourself in the small moments that feel insignificant. The moment you decide to give your real answer instead of the safe one. The moment you choose not to over-explain your no. The moment you sit with someone's disappointment instead of rushing to fix it. Those small moments are where identity is rebuilt. Not in grand gestures, in the quiet, repeated choice to stop leaving yourself, because the truth is this: you are not too much, you never were. You were just surrounded by people and places that could not hold all of you, and instead of finding people and places that could, you made yourself smaller. That ends when you decide it ends, not when circumstances change, not when the people around you evolve, when you decide that your truth is worth speaking, that your needs are worth honoring, that your presence, your full, unedited presence, is not a burden to be managed. It is a life to be lived. You already know what it feels like to betray yourself. You have felt it hundreds of times. That moment right after you said yes when you meant no, that tightness in your chest when you laughed at something that hurt you, that hollow feeling after, a conversation where you performed perfectly and said nothing real. You know that feeling intimately. It is so familiar it barely registers anymore. And that is the most dangerous part, when self-betrayal becomes so routine that it stops feeling like betrayal and starts feeling like just how life is. But it is not how life is. It is how your life has been, and those are two very different things. One is a permanent condition, the other is a pattern, and patterns can be changed, not easily, not overnight, but completely. Because patterns are not who you are, they are what you learned. And everything that was learned can be unlearned. Everything that was built by repetition can be rebuilt by different repetition. The question is whether you are willing to feel the discomfort of that rebuilding, because there will be discomfort. Let that be clear from the beginning. When you start choosing yourself over the approval of others, people will notice. Some will be confused. Some will push back. Some will call you selfish, cold, difficult, changed. And in those moments, the old pattern will rise up in you like a wave. The urgency to explain yourself, the need to soften it, justify it, make them understand. The familiar pull to collapse back into who they are comfortable with, and you will have to feel that pull and not follow it. That is the work. Not dramatic confrontation. Not burning everything down, just the quiet, steady practice of not collapsing when the pressure comes. Here is what most people do not understand about approval seeking. It is not just a habit of behavior. It is a habit of identity. It is not just that you do certain things to gain approval. It is that you believe on a level beneath conscious thought that you need it, that without it something terrible will happen, that without the warmth of being accepted, you will not be okay. And so the real work is not just changing your actions. It is changing what you believe about yourself at the deepest level. It is moving from the belief that you need to be earned to the knowing that you already are, that your worth is not something you perform into existence. It is something you already carry. It has always been there, underneath all the adjusting and shrinking and managing, underneath all of it, still there, still whole, still waiting. Think about who you are when no one is watching, not the version that performs, not the version that manages perception, the version that exists in the quiet, the one that has specific things it finds beautiful, specific thoughts that feel true regardless of whether anyone agrees, specific ways of seeing the world that are entirely your own. That version is the real one. That is not someone you need to become. That is someone you need to stop hiding. And hiding takes so much energy. You may not realize how much of your daily energy goes into maintaining the performance, how much mental space is occupied by monitoring how you are being received, monitoring whether someone seems pleased or displeased, monitoring the temperature of the room, monitoring whether your last message was responded to warmly enough. All of that monitoring is exhausting. And when you start releasing it, when you start caring less about the external read and more about the internal truth, you will feel something remarkable happen. Energy returns, not the buzzing, anxious energy of performing. Real energy, calm, available, clear, the kind of energy that comes from not being at war with yourself. That is what identity stability feels like. It does not feel like confidence in the way most people describe it. It does not feel loud or bold or impressive. It feels like stillness, like being in a room and not needing the room to confirm anything about you, like speaking and not monitoring how each word lands, like existing without the constant background noise of wondering if you are enough. It feels like rest, the deepest kind, the kind that does not require sleep, the kind that comes from finally being who you are without apology, and this is available to you, not as a distant possibility, not as something that happens to other people, as your actual lived experience, but only if you are willing to make the fundamental shift, the shift from seeking to being, from seeking approval to simply being yourself and allowing the world to respond to that. Some people will respond well, some will not, and both outcomes will be acceptable to you because your stability will no longer depend on the response. That is freedom. Real freedom, not the kind that comes from having no responsibilities, the kind that comes from not being owned by anyone's opinion. You have to understand something about the people whose approval you have been chasing. Most of them are not thinking about you as much as you imagine. Most of them are absorbed in their own performance, their own fears, their own need to be seen and accepted. The audience you have been performing for is largely distracted, and the ones who do have strong opinions about who you should be, those opinions say everything about them and almost nothing about you. People who need you to be smaller are people who are threatened by fullness. People who withdraw when you set a boundary are people who are benefiting from your boundarylessness. Their reaction is information. It tells you exactly what the dynamic was built on, and when you see it clearly, you stop taking it personally. You start seeing it for what it is, not rejection of who you are, discomfort with the ending of who you were performing to be. Let people be uncomfortable. That sounds simple. It is not. For someone who has organized their entire inner life around preventing discomfort in others, allowing it feels almost physically wrong. It triggers guilt. It triggers the voice that says you are being selfish, inconsiderate, unkind. But sit with that voice for a moment. Ask it where it came from. Ask it who installed it. Because that voice is not your conscience. That voice is the survival mechanism of a child who learned that keeping others comfortable was the only way to stay safe. You are not that child anymore. You are someone who can choose, and choosing yourself is not selfishness, it is sanity. The most loving thing you can do for the people in your life is to be real with them, not managed, not performed, not curated. Real, because a real relationship requires two real people, and you cannot offer that while you are hiding. Every relationship you have maintained through performance has been built on a fiction, and those relationships do not actually nourish you because they are not actually meeting you. When you become willing to be real, some of those relationships will fall away, and that will hurt. But what replaces them will be something you have never fully experienced. Connection that actually reaches you, because it will finally know where to find you. You will no longer be behind the mask. You will be standing in the open, present, visible, real. This is the life that has been waiting for you. Not a perfect life, not a life without difficulty or misunderstanding or loss, but a life that is genuinely yours. A life where your choices come from the inside, where your relationships are built on truth, where your presence in a room is not a performance, but an arrival, where you move through the world not as a version assembled for approval, but as the original, the one who was always there, underneath all the conditioning, underneath all the fear, underneath all the years of making yourself acceptable, still there, still whole, still completely, unmistakably you. You do not need anyone's permission to be that person. You never did. The only thing that was ever standing between you and that life was the belief that you needed to earn your place in it. You do not. You never needed to earn it. You only needed to claim it, and claiming it does not require a perfect moment. It does not require everything in your life to be in order. It does not require anyone else to change first. It requires only this, the decision made quietly and completely that from this point forward, you will no longer trade yourself for comfort, that your truth is worth the risk of the response, that your real life, the one that actually fits, is worth the discomfort of becoming honest enough to live it. Make that decision, not tomorrow. Now, in this moment, inside yourself, where no one else can see it. Make it like you mean it, because you do. And somewhere underneath everything you have been carrying, you have always known that you do,